of it, it doesn't actually even exist. So what is time? What are we calling time? The only thing we really have is the here and now. Right? So what time is, all time is it's a change in structure. And I'll get into what I'm calling structure, but it's a change in structure. We just arbitrarily call that time. When we look at a clock and watch the structure of the hand go from here to here, we just arbitrarily call that 5 minutes. See, so time is totally derivative.
Arbitrary.
Right? It's totally derivative. It's an arbitrary thing that we just, so we've incarnated into this 3D structural world, okay? And just so we can have reference points with each other and with our environment, we create time. Say, well, structure was at this, like this at this point, and then it changed over to this point, and that difference between that point and that point we call time. You see what I'm saying? Time's not fundamental to the universe at all. Anyway, so what happens is when you're having that little battle between the mind and the heart, you end up depending on time way too much. And that just, it stifles you. It just is, it makes you fumble the ball, basically. Right? So the whole key then is like, okay, what do I do now to get in the right relationship in my heart and have my mind kind of do what it's supposed to do? The time is really, I mean, the mind is the perfect servant to the heart, and that's its right and proper role. Okay, and so that's where you want to kind of focus and say, okay, let's see. I've been living in my head. I know I've been living in my head. You can feel it when you're living in your head because you get distracted and you're thinking about things all the time. And you're trying to make logical sense of things, and you're trying to strategize, and you're trying to figure out the future through probabilities. Right? That's what the mind does. It's trying to figure out the future through probabilities. Right? So everybody knows that experience, right? And what's not as common for people is what the experiences of living in their heart. Right? So, first of all, I'm going to sit down here. Is that okay?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're in a casual setting. So.
We should bring it in and have a powwow.
I know, where's the fire at?
So, just so you know, I mean, this manifestation of sacred chocolate is a manifestation of my sacred heart. Because I put the intention in my heart that that's what I want to do, that was in accordance with my purpose in life, and that was in accordance with who I am. And so my heart started to magnetically attract to it all the things, the events, and everything necessary to create this. The power of the heart is love, and the way love manifests into this physical realm here is through something called primal magnetism. So it's actually, love itself is a power, it's the ultimate power in the universe. In fact, the physical universe is love manifest. So love is not this thing that's just kind of a sentimental thing that that's external to us, like, oh, I'm in love with somebody, right? Or, I'm attached to this thing and I love it, and if I don't have it, the love went away, right? Or if somebody leaves me, the love's gone. See, we have a tendency sometimes to make love external, but it's not that at all. In fact, it's completely fundamental to everything that exists. We are. Completely who we are. So, love manifests itself through primal magnetism. Primal magnetism is in our scientific realm right now, still a little mysterious. Our theoretical physicists know about primal magnetism. They just don't know how to tap it. They want to because, this is what the way they view primal magnetism is infinite amounts of energy in very small spaces. They're like, wow, if we could tap that, all our energy problems would be over like that. But they haven't been able to do it, and it's going to have to be a massive shift in their thinking and everything before they can begin to try crack that code. So what I like to do is just do a quick little exercise on first getting in touch with our hearts. Okay, and then we'll talk a little more mind. I'm going to talk mostly about the mind of the heart right now. Okay? There's a great little exercise that everybody here can do. Leah may have done it before in Mount Shasta. But take your awareness. You may want to just kind of close your eyes, be relaxed, and just take your awareness now to, say, the middle of your right knee. Just take there. You can kind of almost feel like you have a right knee, like, okay, yeah, there it is. I know it exists there. I can kind of feel into it. Once you're there, ask yourself this question. And here's the key word, feel. Does that feel like the center of my being? Most people are going to say no. But you have to come to that determination on your own. The next step to this is go someplace else in your body. I'm going to say your left elbow. Take your awareness to your left elbow, inside your left elbow. Ask the same question. Does that feel like the center of my being? Like the center of my soul? Most people say no, probably. I know it doesn't feel like the center of my soul. Go to the center of your throat. Ask the same question. Go to the middle of your brain and ask yourself, does that feel like the center of my being? Now, if it doesn't feel like the center of your being, go right now and locate where the center of your being is. Just go there. Go right there. And take note. The very fact that you could say no to those other things implies that you do have a center. Right? I mean, the very fact that you can answer in a certain way, no, that doesn't feel like the center of my being. That means that implies a center. Because you have to have a reference point. So that center is your sacred heart, that spiritual heart. And that's the place where you want to be all the time. You want to live there. You want to be there. You want to go there often. And when you're there, you're actually in a state of prayer. And the beautiful thing is that when you're there, especially when you're interacting or communicating with another person, it's a completely different experience than when you're interacting and communicating with another person from your mind. Completely different. One of the fundamental reasons is because it kind of stops your mind from judging the other person and yourself during the conversation or making evaluations. All of a sudden, you're just there from the heart, and you're just innocently taking in the other person and observing them, and just innocently listening and communicating. And you'll notice when you're in your heart space communicating with another person, you'll notice the little chatterbox kind of goes away. And you're like, whoa. And guess what? The other person can fundamentally feel it. They can feel fundamentally that you are there as a friend and not just somebody listening to some conversation, potentially making some sort of evaluations or judgments. When you're in that space and you're communing with another person, you are loving your neighbor as yourself. You're being the love that you are, and you're embracing the other person from your heart in a loving manner. So that is hugely different than living in your mind. Living in your mind actually deteriorates your immune system over time.
Sure.
See, what happens is living in your mind is enervating. It starts to drain energy from your nervous system. And that eventually will drain energy from your immune system. Living in your heart has the opposite effect. It actually enlightens you, empowers you, gives you more life force energy. So it's a fundamental, humongous shift in your way of being. And my personal opinion is the biggest task that humanity has is this. Because once we are living in our hearts and connected with our hearts, everything, you won't even recognize the planet. You won't even recognize human beings as human beings. You'll say, this is a different kind of specimen. This is a different biological organism. You'll think you're on a different planet. That's how big a humongous shift it will be. There won't be all kinds of jockeying for power and money and positions. All that stuff will be meaningless. And true abundance will be there. And true, all the things, all the intelligences of the heart, which I'll get into, will be forefront in everybody's consciousness. But it's an individual thing. Everybody is a yoga. Everybody has to take it on themselves as their personal mission for their own well-being and their own sanity. So I really encourage everybody here to do this sooner rather than later. And make it a serious ongoing practice. Live in the heart. You know how to access the heart. And let me tell you some other things about accessing the heart, and I'll get into the power in the heart. But, when you're there, sometimes you can kind of feel there's something in there. But maybe you're not fully in touch with it, and that's okay. The Sacred Heart is actually a physical point. There's actually a physical location within your physical body. It's usually between your spine and your heart, your physical heart. So this Sacred Heart is usually between your spine and your physical heart. And it's usually aligned with your spine, and it's usually sometimes a little below your physical heart, sometimes a little above. You don't know, it just depends on the person. Okay, that's the point through which at birth your soul came through. And that's the point through which your soul exited death. And so, how do you get deeper and deeper into your heart? Because that ray of love that's coming through your heart, that's empowering your whole life force, is empowering everything in your body. If that love wasn't coming through you, you'd be dead. It'd be over. You'd be like, okay. And there are famous mystics. I mean, even, who was the guy? Yogi, who wrote Autobiography of Yogi? From what's the guy's name? Yogananda? Yeah. He was 55, and he just went into meditation and exited his body. How does somebody do that? How, when you're 55 years old, does your guru from another dimension call you and say, it's time to come? You go into meditation, and he was in front of an audience when this happened. A huge audience. The guy's 55 in perfect health. He goes into meditation and exits his body and dies. His love left. Love left his body. forgot what I kind of got a little distracted. What was I saying just before that? Does anybody remember?
We're talking about the physical location of your sacred
Yes,
heart.
thank you. So this is the key. Your sacred heart has an amazing immune system. I mean, we're talking an amazing immune system. It's super powerful. It's way more powerful than your physical immune system, okay? You can almost view it like there's, it's the gates of heaven, and there's an angel there with crossed swords. It's like, you're not getting in, baby. No way. Because what's in there is pure, and you're complete. And you are 24/7 connected to God, to the divine there, 24/7. It's complete purity. That's the point in your being where you are still completely pure and innocent, completely with the divine. And that's 24/7. And your mind can take you on the wildest goose chase into hell, but you're still connected to the divine. You can't. The moment you disconnect, you're gone. You're out of your body. That's it. You're dead. So the thing is, well, how do you let that little? How do you get past that angel? Like, what do you do, right? Well, the beginning stages, the key is you have to go there in pure innocence. You can't take any baggage into there at all. It won't let it. You have any sort of mental garbage going on, identities, and I don't care what kind of identities there are. Positive, negative identities, positive self-image, ego explosions, ego decimate. I don't care what it is. You can't take it into the Sacred Heart. It won't let you. You've got to be completely innocent. And that's why, in the Bible it says, hey, enter the kingdom of God as a child. Because a child, you look at a 4-year-old child, what's a 4-year-old child do? A 4-year-old child is totally innocent. They don't have any of the mental filters and judgments and preconceived ideas yet. They're just like taking it all in complete innocence. So that's a great exercise, is to go back, meditate, if you can, go back to when you were 3 or 4 years old. Like, meditate on that. Like, what were you like when you were 3 or 4 years old? And you can get in tune a lot with your love, what the nature of your love is when you do that. Because when you're 3 or 4 years old, you were kind of just being the love that you are. And if you remember how you felt when you were that age, you can feel more into what your love is all about and what it's like. That's a great exercise. So that's one key to at least accessing the Sacred Heart. Other things are, obviously meditation exercises to quiet the mind, because like I said, remember, when the mind's got all this stuff going on, that angel's not going to let anything near it. Just forget it. So, just proper meditation techniques are great, like whether you're going to, focus on a still lake or, a little feather floating down or whatever it is. These are all great things to quiet the mind. Another great thing is fasting. I'm on day 11 of a water fast. And so, it feels great because, there's just less going on up here. I got less, I'm thinking about a lot less, and there's a lot less chatter, a lot less whatever going on. So it's much more easier for me to access my heart in this space. Cleansing the temple is helpful. Cleansing the temple, fasting. In the Bible, fasting and prayer combined are mentioned like almost 100 times. So there's huge power there. And why? Why would it be mentioned so many times? To access this, to access God, and God's within. This is where you access God. So these are huge practices. I would say also another fantastic. There's 3 main things you can do to immediately, 4 or 5 that you can do to immediately empower your heart. empower. One huge thing is gratitude and admiration. Just always focus on things that you can admire and have gratitude around. These are natural things. There was a very famous Japanese woman politician, and she lived like 100 years. I mean, she's world famous, but she's very well known, especially in Japan. In Japan, she's famous. I forgot her name, but somebody asked her once, what's your key to success? I mean, you're already 100 years old, and you're a famous politician, and you know, what's going on? And you know what she said? She said, I do 10 things every day that touch my heart. So you know, that's huge, because admiration, gratitude, you're touching your heart, you're empowering your heart. That's just humongous. So, you know, whether it's like just taking a walk in nature, right? Just watching a beautiful sunset or anything like this. Heart empowering things, or you know, playing with a puppy dog, or whatever it is. I mean, it's like these are things that empower your heart. Remember, that's going to empower your life. That's going to empower not only your life and your purpose and your covenants with the Creator, but it's also going to empower your physical body. The next greatest thing, and these aren't in any sort of order, is forgiveness. I mean, forgiveness is just humongo in empowering the heart. One main reason that it empowers the heart so much, besides the obvious, is the mind can't understand it. The mind can't really understand forgiveness. It can't. Because the mind what the mind is a pure logic machine. And what are we talking, when I'm talking the mind, I'm talking about a two-part system. I'm talking about your nervous system and brain. Okay? Kind of the noddy system, and even your chakras. And I'll explain why that is. Okay? And then I'm also talking about the electromagnetic field that just completely surrounds your kind of whole aura body here. That two-part system is your mind. The brain is like this actual literal computer. It's like a DNA biocomputer. It operates on plus and minus electrical impulses, and it's a pure logic machine. Like I like what Ronnie said, it's an abacus, right? It's just like, and what's it designed to do? It's designed to just record information, integrate your heart's commands into the 3D reality, understand the structures, you know, transmit signals, receive signals. That's what it is. But fundamentally, it doesn't have its own power. Does a computer have its own fundamental power? It doesn't, right? It's an instrument. It's an instrument, right? It's a logic instrument. It's a tool. That's right. A computer doesn't have fundamental power to change the conditions of life. And neither does your mind at all. It's the exact same thing. It's a perfect analogy. And in fact, that's why the computer is like it is, because it was built from our minds. You see that? Even the computer operates binary. Ones and zeros. Just like the mind. Pluses and minuses, electrical impulses. The computer is an exact extension of our minds. So the thing is about forgiveness is the mind can't really understand it, because of the fact it's a bean counter. All it wants to do is balance the books. All it can think about is like an eye for an eye and a tooth for the tooth. That's all it can handle. And so when you forgive, really from the heart space, your mind just kind of goes into like a freaking shutdown mode. It can't even deal. It can intellectually. Intellectually, it can go, well, I understand forgiveness, and the way it kind of sort of deals with it is it goes, I'm being a good person. Your ego, and my ship will come in the next life. Karmically, I'm doing good karma by forgiving, and that karma is going to add up in the books, and then I'll be rewarded in the next life. Right?
Yeah.
See, that's what the mind does. But is that true forgiveness? No,
right now.
That's not true forgiveness. The mind, the mind can't even deal with that. It just, even intellectually, it's like, well, I'm creating merits here. I got forgiveness merits. Right?
It avoids actually dealing with it.
See, this is another test that your mind can't comprehend it. Can your mind feel forgiveness? Try going in your mind and try to feel forgiveness with your mind. Like go into your mind and try into your brain and try and feel forgiveness in there. Can you feel forgiveness in there?
I want to do that. It comes from the heart.
That's like asking a computer if it can feel forgiveness. Like Star Trek Next Generation, right? Data, right?
Data.
What's his whole thing, man? There's that one episode where they finally got that little feeling chip in there or something. It's hilarious.
Whoa.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, but it's like there's no way. There's no way. So forgiveness is huge, and all these things that are empowering to the heart. You'll notice, and I haven't even mentioned it yet, but you'll notice that they have infinity associated with them. Infinity, yeah. In other words, you can forgive, and you can forgive, and you can keep forgiving, and keep forgiving, and keep forgiving, and you can forgive and forgive and forgive forever, all the way into infinity. There's no limit. You see what I'm saying? There's no limit to forgiveness. See, forgiveness stands outside of structure. All structure is limited. Your brain is limited. Your brain is part of structure. But your heart, your sacred heart, has no issue with forgiveness. It has no issue with anything infinite. Because it actually it's actually part of God, which is infinite. It has no issues with infinity or anything infinite. And all the great things that will empower your heart are associated with infinity. Like love. Can you love and love and love and keep loving and keep loving and keep loving and keep loving forever? Yeah, there's no end to love. You go forever. Love stands outside structure. Mercy, compassion, hope, charity, true charity. I'm not talking about organized charity I'm talking about true charity, which is the true just giving from the heart. Surrender. So all those things, if you want to focus on those will empower your sacred heart and empower your life hugely. So that's huge. The third big thing that will empower your heart is innocent perception. Innocent perception. Just being one with reality as it is. Not putting any sort of preconceived filters on it, judgments, preconceived ideas, overlaying structures or ideas on it. Just being with it. And again, just like a young kid, right? They're just going to view it innocently. Like say if a young child sees a really bad crippled person, and they're just going to look at it and the person and just say, hey, what happened to your face? Or what happened to your arm or leg? And in that process, a friend is made. But what do? Our minds get involved and we don't want to look, or we're guilty or shy or inhibited, or hire a professional to help that person, or because we're not innocently perceiving. We're perceiving with all kinds of issues and judgments and filters, and that's a complete disconnect from the heart. So innocent perception is huge. When you're living in the mind, you're always actually living with a little bit of guilt. In fact, guilt's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. It's a great alarm system. It actually means you've departed from living in your heart. It's like alarm bells. You've left the heart. Guilt, you've left the heart. That's what guilt is. So that's your so have you ever just like I'll give you an example. Just say you're just walking, you're doing your normal business, you're just kind of walking around town or whatever, you're doing errands or whatever, and you just happen to catch the eye of a stranger. And what typically happens, either you or he kind of looks away after a while because it's too uncomfortable to keep looking. Has anybody experienced that?
All the time.
Has anybody experienced that? It's because you're living your mind. And it's the guilt. Right? It makes you uncomfortable. But instead, if you were in your heart when you connected with a person, there wouldn't be any reason to feel guilt. You wouldn't feel there wouldn't be any negative things about anything. In fact, when you're really 1,000% in your heart and you connect with just a random stranger in the eyes and you're just there looking at him, you don't even have to say any words. And and if the person's halfway open, if they're not totally in their heart, in their minds, and have to look away or kind of get fearful, they'll all of a sudden catch on and go, whoa. You can just be there with each other, just acknowledging each other, and just blessing each other, and just thankful for your coexistence. So that is really, really powerful and innocent perception. But it's innocent perception that will allow you to do that, meaning that you are operating from your heart. You are operating from that space. So the mind is not. It's not a bad thing. It's a great thing. It just has to take its directives from the heart. And say you have an issue, like you're trying to make a decision. It's a really hard decision, okay? And you have to listen to your heart. But your mind keeps jumping in, right? It says, geez, I don't know. It's like, should I do that? If I do that, then this and this and this is going to happen. Or if I do that, and that's going to happen. And I don't know. And what the mind can only serve up probabilities at best. It's like, well, if I do that, there's like a 50% chance that could happen. I don't want that to happen. But if I do that, there's a 50% chance that could happen. I don't want that to happen. And your mind is like, And I have a friend. In fact, this is a great example. I have a friend. She's actually a neighbor. Her daughter's best friends with my daughter. And there's been a drama going on. The drama this last couple of weeks is that she wants to buy a new car. But she doesn't know if she wants to buy a new car. And she keeps coming over to my house, and I keep counseling her. And both arguments are completely logical. Remember, this is one thing that's sort of dangerous about the mind. The mind will accept any argument if given with perfect logic.
Yeah.
And the argument could be completely false.
Especially in the rainforests.
That's right. See, so what is really determining whether the argument is true or false? Your heart. Your heart determines whether the argument is true or false. But if your mind's disconnected from your heart, and it's just left to run by itself, and if it's given two equal arguments with perfect logic, remember, the mind's a logic machine. Remember, it's a computer. If you put some input into the computer, it's just going to give an output. If it's negative input, it's going to give negative output. If it's positive input, it's going to give positive output. Same with the mind. But it doesn't care. So long as if there's no logic going into the input, then the thing crashes. It says, no, sorry, can't even deal with it, can't even process. So, so there's a perfect argument why she should keep her car and not get a new one. There's another perfect argument why she should get the car. And then she's had all this anxiety over it. And like sleepless nights. And I'm like, okay, Janice, well, what are you afraid of? Well, I saved up all this money and I don't know, I'm just worried about the money and what if I can't make it again, or and basically it comes down to scarcity mentality. It's like, oh, geez, I don't know if she could. I'm like, look, I go, the fundamental issue is your belief, your deep-seated belief, either in your mind or your heart, that there's scarcity, right? They're scared that everything is, but that's the furthest thing from the truth. There's more in the universe that you could ever see, do, or touch in 10 million lifetimes. And that right there is evidence that there's so much incredible abundance. It's ridiculous. All you have to change your attitude towards a positive expectancy. But ultimately, you've got to change the fundamental belief of scarcity and abundance. See, there are a lot of people out there with a ton of money, okay? And a lot of people out there with a ton of money are very unhappy. And a lot of people out there with a ton of money are very happy. Well, what's the difference? The difference is the belief between scarcity and abundance. See, a person who grows up with scarcity consciousness, remember, the mind is a logic machine. When the mind's fed this negative input that there's scarcity, the mind will compensate. And it'll start working overtime to compensate for the scarcity. The person will become a workaholic. They'll work like crazy and make tons of money. They make tons and tons and tons of money, and then they have all this money, and they're afraid of losing it because they got the scarcity mentality. They don't know what to do with it. How do I invest it? It's like, geez, I can't do anything. You get paralyzed by the whole thing, right? And so they never can enjoy their prosperity. They're always a slave to it. They always need to make more because in case something happens in the stock market, they lose some of it. And what ends up happening is that wealth ends up being used to perpetuate poverty consciousness, either in their own children who grew up with the whole thing, or just in the business world, because that wealth will end up being used in leveraged ways to create perceived scarcities so that they continue to try and make more money based on other people's perceived scarcities. Right? That's what happened. That's what's happening with my friend Janet. It's only on a much smaller scale. Now, the person with abundance consciousness, they grow up, they believe in the abundance of the universe, and they're like, wow. And so their mind gets that positive input. Oh, it's abundant universe. So the mind just logically goes about, doing its thing to create wealth, because it's going to come anyways because there's abundance. And so that person will go out and create wealth, and they'll typically do it in a lot easier fashion. It'll come a lot easier, okay? And then they can enjoy it. They're like, woo, yay, let's spend it and have fun. Because they know it's an abundant universe. They're not afraid of losing it. In fact, if they lost it all, they wouldn't even matter to them because they just make more. Because it's an abundant universe. You see? So the mind can't change those conditions. The mind can't, only the heart can change these fundamental conditions of life. The mind can't. The mind just processes input. So it's your love. And so the script of your life is written in your sacred heart and rewritten. And you have the power. Your love has the power to continue to rewrite that script in your sacred heart. And when you're in touch with your love, you'll feel into what your purpose is. And there'll be clues along the way. If you're doing something that just gives you joy, all of a sudden you're doing something that you just have so much joy, that's a clue. That's a clue that you're doing something that's along your purpose. It's along your covenants with the Creator. It's like all of a sudden you have those joyful moments, like, wow, this is awesome, right? So I told all this to my friend Janet. So I think we'll see what ends up happening. And I know I was saying something that led into that discussion. I forgot what it was.
Those two opposite inputs, logical mind.
Yeah. I'm kind of getting back to that a little bit. So basically, Let's back up a little bit. You know, what do we call structure? Right? Structure is just patterns in the universe. Right? And how are these patterns built up? Well, let's go back to like, how's the universe created? What is the universe? So the universe is just built up of three components. It's built up of love, which is the fuel, the power. Okay, it's basically God. I mean, the most we could ever even comprehend God is as love. Beyond that, it's just a mystery. It's just a divine, creative. You know, we'll never. We don't know. Then there are these kind of fundamental particles that I like to call the adamantine particle, but our modern physicists call this the Higgs particle, or the Higgs boson particle. And this is the most fundamental subatomic particle in the universe. And the Giant Hadron Super Collider in Europe that they built and went online about 3 or 4 years ago, the 10-year purpose of this super collider is to find this particle. And there was a bunch of news that just came out like last month that they're getting close. They got all this data, and they believe after researching this data for the next couple of years that they'll actually be able to identify this particle. But anyway, so there's this fundamental particle, and then there's this thing called the one spirit. So these three things, everything that is part of existence is made up of these three things. Love, the one spirit, and the adamantine particles. Our theoretical physicists know the one spirit as the unified field matrix, which was probably one of the greatest scientific discoveries of the 20th century. They basically figured out that everything's connected. In fact, there's no place where there's nothing. That's right. There's no such thing actually as a vacuum. No, it doesn't exist.
Source field.
There's not source. You can call it a source field or whatever. There's a giant fabric that's connected. Everything's connected. In fact, we're all part of the one spirit. Like this thumb here is part of the one spirit. There's nothing where the one spirit is not. There's no division in it. It's one giant wholeness of existence. It's like this fundamental matrix or fabric. And information can be communicated instantaneously across the universe. Like this conversation is felt across the universe instantaneously through the one spirit. There's no time lag. And our scientists have even proven that. There's two great experiments. One it's a cult classic. You can pick up a book called The Secret Life of Plants. And that talks about how this great cryptologist who used to work for the CIA or FBI or something, Clive Baxter was his name, and he figured out that he had some plants in his office, and I think he might have been the inventor of the polygraph test, lie detector test, and he hooked up this polygraph meter to his plant, and he realized that the meter would change based on like his energy towards the plant. Like if he was loving the plant, the meter would change, and then if he was starting to threaten the plant, the meter would freak out. So the plant, and he had a relationship with the plant. I mean, it was his plant. He watered it every day. It was he loved the plant, and so he realized that plant knew his intentions because he would try and fake the plant out. He would try and fake the plant out. Like he'd pretend like he's going to hurt the plant, and the plant would not freak out because the plant knew that he was faking. That's right. He'd like, okay, I'm going to get you, and the needle wouldn't move on the meter. He's like, whoa. But then when he actually went to like burn the leaf with a fire, the thing would freak out. So, they started doing these distance experiments where they put like say he would go to the other side of the world and the plant would be in his office hooked up to a machine. And something would happen, they would do something where something would happen, like the guy would be under a lot of stress, like say it's Cleve, I don't know, it might have been somebody else, but he would be under a lot of stress and be freaked out or got hurt, and instantaneously it would register on the plant's meter. Instantaneously, there was no time lag. They would record the times. There's no perceivable time lag at all. How do you explain that? Well, it's explained through the one Spirit. The one Spirit is one giant organism, if you will. If you touch it on this side, it instantly feels it on the other side. And everything's communicated through prayer, love. I mean, everything's communicated through the one Spirit. So these three, another great experiment, by the way. In fact, they use the Cleve Baxter thing. They use that at NASA right now. They don't know how exactly. Again, they don't really. They have spiritual explanations, like I'm telling you right now, but they don't really know the deep scientific mechanism. But the NASA astronauts on the ground, they can tell instantaneously when the astronauts are freaking out under stress. And you know how they do that? They take some cells, like from the cheek of the astronaut, and they put it in a petri dish and keep them alive.
Whoa.
And then they hook up all these meters to the cells. And then when the cells start freaking out because the astronauts, the astronaut doesn't even have to talk to them. They already know that there's something going on up there. So that's the power of it. So love. It turns out that love commands the adamantine particles. So what's running the show is love in the universe. Like I said, remember the whole universe is love manifested. The adamantine particles are taking their direction from love. Now, some of them have already taken their direction in a solid format, like they've decided to, through the commandments of love, become subatomic particles, and then become neutrons, protons, electrons, atoms, whatever. Okay, and then create physical agreements and so on and so forth. But then there are an infinite supply of free-flowing adamantine particles. Infinite supply. And that infinite supply is constantly being breathed in and breathed out by everything. And I like to call these adamantine particles the prana or the chi. So when somebody in the mystical science, practices of the East, they talk about the prana or the chi or whatever. Basically, I believe on the most fundamental level, it's adamantine particles, because like I said, there's an infinite supply that are free flowing. And so when you look at miracles of love and healing, all it is just, once you're so certain that love is who you are, and that, love commands the adamantine particles, then you can do things, obviously like the mystics and saints have proven, to draw in enough adamantine particles and arrange them into whatever they need to be arranged to become whatever you want them to become. And so then love resonates to the one Spirit. So the one Spirit responds to love. So love will sit there and resonate, almost like if you drop a pebble into a pond and see the ripples. That's kind of like the one Spirit. Like that love will resonate through the whole one Spirit. So love communicates to the one Spirit instantaneously. And we're talking about on a scientific level what love is. It's a mystery. Nobody really knows, but you can kind of talk about some sort of reversal transference where there's constant dialogue between two things. They're constantly transferring between each other in the presence of some third stabilizing thing, whether it's intention or first light or whatever. But nobody really knows. Love is the grandest mystery of the universe, and it's the universal solvent. It's it's a thing that you surrender, and there's that great passage from the Bible. I don't have it on the top of my head, but it's like it's like all paradoxical, right? It's like you conquer by surrender, right? That's what love does. I mean, it's like you give away, and then that's how you receive, right? This is how love functions. Like I said, on all levels. It's this constant reversal dialogue going on. So when I talk about structure, what I'm talking about really is things built up out of these three things in the physical realm. So these things stand outside of structure, but they also